forum. Okay, so starting now. Okay.
Let me switch the screen.
Okay. Now we have, we're shooting a little differently, this forum, because the tech is being weird. So the actual screen that Ms. A actually observes, that's usually facing us, is now in the back of the camera due to the sign coming in reverse when we have it the other way around. I don't know what that's all about. So if you have questions, you can actually just interject, and sometimes do that anyway, which is fine, because I get on the roll, and if I get too far along, it may not be relatable to the questions that you have to ask. So it's fine if you just go ahead and interject. Also, just let me know who's asking the question as well. So just, in other words, announce yourself and then ask your question. So are we close to?
We're ready.
We're ready then?
Ready for the third Ask the Chief.
Okay. So welcome, fellow consciousnesses, to the third installment of Ask the Chief. We already did our containment. I decided to add a segment that I call, some think we're mispronouncing it, from trivia to trivial. It is trivial, but not as an insult. Trivial means that the questions don't necessarily have anything to do with personal growth, but they're curiosity questions. And a lot of people have these questions, such as the first one we'll probably address. And I'm going to be using applied kinesiology, multi-testing NSTHA, to get those answers. So those answers will be coming from the associates. Do we need to move this? From the associates. So one of the first questions had to do with, which is an age-old question, who built the pyramids and so on and so forth. So we're going to start with that one, and I'm going to move around and then just have this take her position. Okay. So, not that I haven't had this question asked before in the sessions, and I do the same thing. I just muscle test to get the information screen. Yeah. All right. So, okay, good. So information I got a long time ago having to do with pyramids was that, a lot of the things that are written about it had to do with slave labor and all that, building and dragging stones from, miles and miles and miles away. None of that is true. So is any of that true? Get a resistance to that. So, okay. What was the question? Oh, okay, Moses stuff. Yeah, there's variations. It's all theory and conjecture. Things that are written about anything having to do with prehistory has to do with theory, which means guess. Some will say an educated guess, but that's not really the truth. It's just a guessing, and a lot of times it has an agenda to it as to why they come up with certain answers for certain things. They try to bend things, the system tries to bend things to support their agenda. So, were the pyramids built by beings who were off-planet beings? You got a yes on that. Slaves were not involved, therefore technology was involved in creating these pyramids. Yes on that. Okay, they're resisting to having a baby here. So this means that these answers, I go along with these answers before I go along with any answers that I've seen in any book that I've ever read throughout my whole life having to do with the pyramids. This stuff makes more sense to me. So what is the other part of the pyramid? What they were used for. Oh, someone mentioned something about pyramid power. So do they consider, those who are answering, consider pyramid power to be a valid question, pyramid power? Not really. In one sense, they were used in many ways, energetically balancing energy amongst other planets in the actual star system. So apparently all planets, I would say live planets, or even the ones who are no longer live, have pyramids on them. So this is literally a connection to the broader universe, spring consciousness universe. If that information is not here, that means that Earth has been separated from the broader universe. Because information will come in and tell you everything that's going on and what it, what it's about. Once, let's see, there's something having to do. If anyone has another question regarding the pyramids, I know that there's a written that there was a gold cap at the top of the pyramids, on the top of the pyramids, and especially the one in Giza, primarily the one in Giza, had a gold cap. Is that true? You say yes, that's true. That did have a gold cap. And as it is now, when it was first built, it had smooth sides. And even certain friends of mine who were in Egypt, who do these tours, mentioned that it had smooth sides. Some said that it was limestone, but I don't believe that's true. It was a limestone. And I got, no, it was like a basalt. A basalt facing. Basalt. So basalt conducts energy. It has a number of properties in it. Iron's one of them, which would make sense if it's something that basically reflects, retains, and gives off energy. So does the pyramid give off energy? When it was actually activated, it gave off energy. What's the next one? Well, okay, we go to that. But there's certain things that, yeah, I think, is there any other question having to do with the pyramids? So I know there's there's a lot of them, but I'm kind of not really hitting a wall. But the ones that stand out to me the most are the ones that I answered. If there's some other peripheral questions that have to do with the pyramids, you can go ahead and ask. Okay. Someone's clear.
This is. Can I ask a question? This is Halana.
Sure.
So, what was their purpose in building the pyramids?
It was like a communication base between planets throughout the universe. So, as far as to understand what that means, as far as like also traveling from one place to another using pyramids as well. So, say traveling from one place to another using pyramids, you get yes on that. Difference. The reason it doesn't really, it wouldn't really work necessarily for those of us who are in a lower vibrational state is because we're in a lower vibrational state. Everybody's genetics have been modified to be in this realm, lower vibrational. Those who were using the pyramids to actually move from one place to another, they vibrated at a much higher vibrational rate than we do. That's a yes on that. Meaning? And also it tied into areas throughout Gaia, throughout the planet as well. So there was connecting points throughout the planet. And I don't know how many of you have looked up, pyramids in general. There are pyramids in a number of places on the planet. And some they found, I guess, within the last 20 years. There's one that's kind of an archaic looking one that's in Yugoslavia. There are ones that are in South America are considered to be pyramids as well. There are pyramids that are actually underwater in the ocean as well. There are a number of pyramids in China as well. And the ones in China, actually, you can see them on Google Earth. And I don't know what the coordinates anymore, but they have a number of pyramids within proximity of each other, ancient pyramids. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So one of the other questions had to do with Atlantis, which was, okay, they're having a connection to that one too, screen. So over time, doing sessions and getting information, a lot of times I get information through my clients due to their past expressions and what their connections were with certain things, certain events, and so on and so forth on the planet. The reason they have a hard time, this is basically information I'm getting from those on the other side, from the hierarchy, not hierarchy, from the associates, is that Atlantis was never an island. That's correct? It was never an island. And the imagery that I have gotten for like the last 30 years, Atlantis was like a humongous craft, like a ship that was seated in the ocean. Something initially like that was hijacked by something very, very dense. Now, the question is, what happened to Atlantis? From what I got, that Atlantis at a certain point lifted off and headed out into space. There are individuals talking about some red-faced people or something. That one I never got any, they never agreed to that. They said it definitely wasn't red-faced people. So were there red-faced people who inhabited Atlantis? No. That's another ruse. That's another ruse. From what I'm getting from the associates, that those beings who initially, control that vehicle, Atlantis, the humongous vehicle, were from the solar system Sirius B. Yes on that. Now, going into that would just open up a whole can of worms, and then, it would just take too long. And as part of the, the end story that I brought up, from time to time, that's involved with, all the things that are going on this planet and the state that it's in right now, goes all the way back to this particular character that I'm calling Yin. So with Atlantis, let's see, is there any other questions? I know that there was experimentation supposedly done, and I did get that there was experimentation that was done on that craft. No? They're locking.
Not by
not by Sirius B, by density that actually had taken over the craft. So density took over the craft, did the experimentation on the craft. You know, some of that had to do with genetically, the minotaurs and various other types of beings were basically genetically manipulated or created on that craft. You got a yes on that as well. So there's some stories that talk about little aspects of it, and I'm getting verifications on some of it, but not all of it. There's certain things that happen. I get verification from the associates. A number of things, again, just like everything on this, in this world, has always been manipulated for a certain reason to lock people into a mindset, to control, or to take advantage, or just basically to feed. Okay? So any questions having to do with the Atlantis issue? Okay. The third one, yeah, I decided to just going to do 3 so that we don't spend, the majority of the time talking about these particular subjects. What's the third one?
You can choose from Mayan civilization, Stargate,
Yetis. And Stargates, I think the first one of the early ones was the Yeti thing, wasn't it?
yes, that was
Okay, someone wanted to know if Yetis are real. So, well, I found subject matter that says they are. So Yetis are real. And they're also, related to what they call the Bigfoot. And there's another 1 or 2 of them that they're related to as well. These guys are generally, a lot of times from the things I've read in the past, they would show up in conjunction with some kind of a sighting of a spacecraft or something like that, and then shortly after, someone would see a sighting of a Yeti. And there's some stories having to do with certain nations, people who, in a certain location in the United States, would actually, I should say, just accommodate some of these beings who were dropped off from these ships. So the story, what they're saying is true, and it's true. So again, having to do with ETs and so on and so forth, extraterrestrial vehicles, what people will call, the West calls indigenous people, I call nations people, they knew about this stuff, forever, really. So the whole concept of whether aliens exist and all this other kind of stuff, it's just, just nonsense. So with that, associates agreed with, in other words, that's the information that Yetis, Bigfoot, and all these particular types of cryptozoological creatures, I think is the term that they use, a number of them do exist. Well, with like anything that's here, depending on who's involved with them, they can be either light or dense as well. So very much like people. Okay, so that's the third question, and we have some more, but I'm going to save those for for future in the future forum. If anyone has a question right off the bat before we start to get into our list of questions that people sent in, you can ask now if you like. If not, we'll start with the list, and then I'll just start going down the list. And if anything comes to mind, again, because of our inability to see the screen, you can just basically, which was good, one of you cleared your throat, let us know that you wanted to ask a question. So just let me know, and don't worry if you feel like if I'm in the middle of explaining something. You can if it's something that you feel like is pertinent to what we're talking about, just go ahead and let me know that you have a question. And I may just finish whatever I'm saying and then address your question, or we can just, just break in and address your question. So then starting off.
The first question is, Chief, what types of feeding goes on during the Christmas season?
Oh, what types of feeding goes on during the Christmas season? Okay, yeah, it is a holiday season. Well, there is feeding, a lot of feeding that goes on. Where to start? One, it raises stress levels, through the roof for most people, because all of a sudden there's this time frame in which you have to give gifts to people. Also, it generates a certain type of essence from just wondering whether you're going to get a gift from someone, or whether you're going to give a gift and not get a gift, that type of stuff. Financial strain is a big one. And I've known people in the past who would put themselves, like $20,000 in debt just for Christmas to buy their kids and their relatives all this stuff that 9 times out of 10 they don't need. Personally, I don't observe Christmas, and personally, I don't like getting gifts, and I don't like giving gifts. So being a person who doesn't like really giving gifts, because it's just like trying to figure out, what to get somebody. It's like mandatory, I have to give a gift. And that's another problem. I really don't like that. I never liked this, since I got old enough to actually have to buy stuff for myself. When I was a kid, of course, most kids like it, So from there, let's see. Refresh me with it.
You said that why do you have to choose this season to be nice?
Oh, right, yeah, we had a lot of discussion. Yeah, there's also, we're going to be reviewing one of the Christmas movies on the Women's Forum, and or two or three of them, depending on how much time we have. And it's like it's almost like a way of programming people to feel like I have to be nice at a certain time, instead of like, when I was a kid, I was like, why can't people be nice all year long? Instead of this, all of a sudden it's a season to be jolly, So that was, that's another problem. And again, it's about programming and locking people into a mindset. And, boy, howdy, people really, growing up, people really love their Christmas, man. And I have to admit, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed getting gifts because I was a little kid. But also I liked the Christmas lights and, and all of that. The odd thing about Christmas is it's supposed to be a Christian holiday, but it represents paganism with the killing of a tree. So that's a pagan ritual, which Christianity is supposed to be against. So that was a little odd for me once I got to the point of understanding that. But along with all these other things having to do with just loading a certain amount of stress on people, that's the biggest one. It just loads a lot of stress on individuals. And if someone doesn't get gifts, or someone can't afford to buy gifts, and also, I think there's stats that have been around for like decades talking about how many people commit suicide around that time, and how many people go into major depression around that time as well. So it's a major feeding frenzy, literally. And, and I just naturally just gravitated away from it. It wasn't like I took a stance because of all of that. It's just that I just didn't feel it, And it's just kind of funny when someone feels like, I gotta give you a gift. And then you get a gift from somebody, and it's like some really acrylic handkerchiefs or something like that scratch your face if you try to blow your nose, just because they have to give you something, So, any questions around Christmas? Anyone want to add anything, or just Okay. Oh, yeah. I don't know if anyone remembers that Tickle Me Elmo stuff, where people were literally fighting each other in the department stores over, the last Tickle Me Elmo. Back in the early 80s, it was the Cabbage Patch dolls that people were fighting over Cabbage Patch dolls and things like that. This is, if I really wanted to, I can go on a good long time as to why Christmas is not a great thing for me. Again, it's pretty, but it's like tension wrapped in a nice package. Oh, well, again, going against what I teach as far as in Neo Shamanism about eating other people's food. You can, again, contain and try to clear your food, but 9 times out of 10, if you're not really, really, really good at it, you're still going to get some tox from whatever you're eating. And you're eating a lot of other people's food on top of that. So say candies from here, turkey from there. Some people have traveled from house to house for those holidays, including like in Thanksgiving. I don't know if they do that in Thanksgiving, but they do, you do get together with family and you eat the bird and you eat a bunch of food. So you can get contamination from that. But again, if you want to do that, just own up on your containment. That's all I have to say. So we're going to move to.
I'm gonna try to get it.
Okay. Okay. Next question is.
Unless someone else has a question.
Everybody's quiet as
Okay.
church mice. So let's.
Okay, so the next question has been submitted. When someone contains a room, can they also contain the items in the room, or is it better to contain the room and the items separately?
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good question. Initially, I start out with containing the whole room. Everything in it is, is inside of that containment. And certain particular smaller items, I will do a separate containment. So it's almost as though you put a big one in something that maybe inside of something will scrunch itself up, make itself smaller. So I would suggest, contain the room first, and then certain items in the room, you start to contain those, those areas. And those who've had enough sessions where they empath more, you can generally feel something that feels a little funny. And then that's, then you will contain and add more containment to it. In as many numbers, as many containments as you feel needed. So that's basically the answer for that question. Anyone want any more clarification on that? Okay, we're going to move to the next.
Okay. The next question is, what is the difference between containing food versus containing an object?
Okay, another good question. And the difference between containing food, unless someone's focusing on the food with intent, you're basically containing the energy of the persons who handled the food, and in particular the person who made the food, who cooked the food. Because when you're cooking, your energy, your intention, goes into whatever you're doing. So when it comes to objects, there's a similarity, but primarily when I'm containing objects in the past, it had to do with something that's in that object, another consciousness that's sitting in an object. Consciousness will sit in object, not necessarily food. Because, in other words, you're consuming the food, the object you're not. So when you're dealing with objects, that's literally, I should say the major focus would be the entities that's possibly be in that item. And also, if someone touches and owns something, say you, in other words, you get something from someone who's passed on, inherit something from someone who's passed on, they're passing on that energy. So it's similar to with corkscrewing, where corkscrewing is when people, intentionally try to focus and put what I call a corkscrew, because that's how it looks when I see it when I'm working on someone. looks like a little corkscrew that goes in and then gets lodged in there. So someone, if you're inheriting item from someone who's moved on, if it's something that you can put in flour salt for a certain number of days or even weeks at times, depending on the person and what kind of energy they had, you'll have to do something like that. Let's see, from there.
So sometimes the amount of energy and toxicity in an item depends on how much that person uses it and also what kind of attention they give that object.
Right. So yeah, when I was talking about the number of days or weeks you have to clear something, does have to do with whether that was somebody's favorite object or they used it a lot. Even objects that just end up sitting in a person's room, because when you walk into a room, your energy fills that room. And depending on whether someone's energy is dense or light, the energy will stain the walls. It's like walking into an old house, and you always feel, if you're someone sensitive, you always feel who was in there before. And sometimes it's like Grand Central Station in some places. You know, apartments is why I don't like apartments that much. And the older the apartment building, the more stain in the walls. You know, they can cover it with paint all they want, but the stain of whoever was in there, that energy is still in the walls. Okay.
Containing something that's rarely used or containing a mirror. Mirrors are a different thing.
Yeah. Well, did we have a question about mirrors before?
We did.
Okay. Well, it's good to repeat things anyway. Yeah. Well, mirrors. There are people for whatever reason like mirrors. And mirrors are really something, those who have, I've talked to this about, before, that mirrors are literally a doorway. And that's why sometimes if you're sitting there and you're staring in a mirror, you start to feel creeped out after a while. It's because you're tapping into something that's on the other side of that mirror. So when you get mirrors, I always put containment around the mirror, and I literally cover the face of that mirror energetically with containment. One of the other things you can do with mirrors that, when you're not using them, you can just cover them. The wall mirror or even a standing mirror, you just cover it. If it's a hand mirror, you can just put it in something, or have a sleeve or something to put it in, or put it into the drawer or whatever, face down. Yeah. With the mirrors, or yeah, I think we can move on. Another question, unless someone has a question again.
I just want to ask or add on to the mirror part. I remember, because I always cover my TV because the screen is reflective too. So would mirrors and also anything that kind of reflects pretty clearly, like a TV screen or opaque doors? I don't know.
No, it's a good question, actually. Really good question. Mirrors have a different property than just, regular reflective surfaces.
Okay.
Just I don't know if it's the process of how we used to polish them. That, would be what would cause that particular type of energetic vibration in them. As far as if you're walking toward the door that has a mirror, yeah, it's still a mirror. With TVs, they're good to cover also because they are connected to other things on an energetic level, because a lot of things travel through electrical lines or just the air. There are individuals who have an allergy to even having a computer router in their room. And I've known people personally who their hands and feet would start to dry up and crack. And then found out, that it was due to whatever the energy that was coming off of the router. And then after removing the router from the room, their hands and their feet would recover.
Oh, wow.
Especially someone who was watching the TV all night. It's a signal that came from the TV, and it messed up his health just because he who's very susceptible.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to remember which client that was.
It's not one of them.
Oh, okay. The guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Oh, he had a lot of interesting experiences like that. Yeah, there's actually when with TVs, also with computers. So when you're online with computers, but even if you're not even online, there's times you have to be very careful. In other words, just covering the screen of computers. As I was talking about a particular client that I had that one evening was watching, television, and some kind of pulse came through, and he felt it, and after that, his health went downhill. So again, with the same individual who had sensitivity to routers, she would actually look at a computer for a while, and then would actually, feel, because she was very, very sensitive on top of this and other thing. She would feel something looking at her, and at times, certain things on the screen would shift. So seeing different images. And I've had some similar experiences like that myself, looking at a computer screen, and then, kind of nodding off a little bit, opening my eyes, and, and I'm watching a movie on my laptop. All of a sudden, there's another image over the movie. I can't even see the movie, but I see this other image of something like a street scene somewhere, or something moving really large, moving through the sky on the screen. And then I would just like blink my eyes or whatever, and then it's gone. So there's a lot of ways that things, because again, all tech is created here on this planet by the density. They create things to keep you in the chicken coop. So if you have awareness of what they're doing, it makes it harder for them to actually, get over on you using the tech. So if you know that you can contain your computer before you use it, as you contain your, your phone before you use it for the day, and even if someone's calling you, even at really weird times, that's another thing about tech. If you find yourself moving in a very positive direction, and you're starting to feel really good about the direction, lo and behold, this happens 90% of the time with that many 90% of my clients. Someone from the past, way from the past, a lot of times, will call up individuals that you definitely don't have a really good relationship with, but all of a sudden, out of the blue, they want to text you or they want to call you. And a lot of times, more than one person, usually just like a handful of people that you haven't even talked to for a while, will all of a sudden at the same time just hit you up. So they use tech also
that's been happening
that way, where if you answer, you start talking to them, they'll start to corkscrew you to pull you backwards into a zone that you're trying to get out of. But someone's going to ask the question.
I have actually a question, Mimosa here. What if it's the other way around? If I have the feeling, or if I just feel like calling someone that I haven't been talking to in a while and just see how they're doing, is it also that they're trying to, like, I don't know, get me to call them, or is it just me wanting to check in?
Another good question. Depending on how the thought comes up, if it's just like all of a sudden out of the blue, that's someone basically focusing on you. Now, if you come across something and they don't like that information, so if you're looking through papers or something like that, and you may come across someone and you say, oh wow, I haven't talked to so and so in a long time. Maybe I'll see how he or she is doing. That could be more benign, but also that could also be suspicious too, as to why all of a sudden you're looking through whatever you're looking through. It's like you having to be aware of everything you're doing, but not to the point where you're just paranoid about everything, but just practice awareness of everything you're doing in conjunction with understanding that this realm is much larger than what you see. So if you're calling someone and like that, the question you would ask is, what's been your relationship with that person? What was the last, how was the last interaction with them? if it was a stressful interaction, or is this person someone that you have stressful interactions with on the regular or semi-regular even. So some will be someone's parent, you know, and it's mandatory in the rule books to call your parents, even though a lot of, you know, people don't, you know, for certain reasons, because some parents are, you know, well, a lot of them, you know, are you know, basically hacked and run the program. So if you call them, you know, and you're 35 years old, all of a sudden you start to shrink into like a 5-year-old. So that's one of the things also when someone's calling you, when you're actually moving and you're expanding and you're growing, they're trying to pull you back into a place where you're easily accessible and you're easy to feed off. Which basically just, you know, lowers your energy, your vibration. Also, a lot of individuals who talk to individuals like that, they at times will go into a depression after getting in touch with these individuals. So is that good, or you any more?
That's great, thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
The question Mimosa asked is a perfect segue for the next question that was submitted, which is fixation a healthy behavior? Because you were referring to fixation as a way that where people feel obligated to call someone, or you know, it just pops in their head.
Yeah, that's true. If someone's fixating on you, you may find yourself all of a sudden thinking that, or thinking about that person, and thinking that you should call that person. So fixation is definitely it's like I would say subliminal, because it's literally just sending thought waves in your direction. And a lot of times those individuals have some kind of connection to you in some form of what I call a corkscrew. Also, there's minor corkscrews and there's major corkscrews. And have some kind of a minor corkscrew that, you know, that will make you think that it's okay to call that individual without actually assessing the situation as to why do I feel like I want to call this person. So when people fixate, they literally are tapping into your energy, and individuals who are in the public eye or show business will get fixated on constantly. So a number of them will get into some kind of spiritual, mystical work, and that's because they're feeling the pressure or feeling the drain from their so-called fans.
You said that there's corkscrewing from a message that we talked
Yeah,
about.
just like that. Yeah.
And then you said if you call someone to acquire an obsessive attachment to someone or something.
Let's see. And I was saying that in.
Gathering attachments, because your fixation can be.
Oh, we're talking about the person. The subject matter is fixating. So yeah, if you're fixating on someone, which is definitely not good, you know, you're on the other, you know, the shoes on the other foot, you're literally trying to feed off of that individual. So when certain men obsess over certain women or something like that, or the other way around, women will obsess over a guy or something like that, you know, like that. And part of that is, I think there's another question that's coming having to do with altars and things of that sort, or people building things, sort of like minor altars to other people. You know, someone who has like pictures of someone that they're really into, you know, plastered on their wall, or you know, or you know, framed, and that person may not even know that you have this mini altar to them. You know. So if you're doing any of that kind of stuff, you need to stop. Literally, it's just interfering with someone else's trajectory. And Neo Shamanism is not about interfering with others' trajectory. You know.
Also, you can gather attachments with that sort of focus on others.
Well, yeah. Well, that's true. Well, when someone's doing that type of obsessing, they are opening themselves up also to other attachments. And again, if you're focusing on another person, and that person is not someone who even have any awareness of having attachments or energy clearing and so on, you're literally walking into, it's almost like walking into a neighborhood of someone, and you may not be equipped to deal with what's there. So there's a lot of, there was a saying, I can't remember, it was totally years ago, and forgive me if I don't get it correct, but it was an African saying that had something to do with beware of the beautiful people. Having to do with, if someone's so gorgeous, there's a good chance that they might be someone who's feeding, who's attracting you in a certain way, attracting your attention to feed on you. And there are titles, like succubus, and men can be succubus also, and sirens, which usually what they label women who are like that, have that kind of energy. Okay. Okay, if no questions from that, we can go to the next one.
Okay. The next one. Okay. Is it a program to make a plan for your future that includes others? What do you think about that, Chief?
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, this one's, well, if you're raising a family, you got a bunch of kids or whatever, then you got to make plans, if you're going to be, moving from one place to another, and that will involve those individuals, It's hard to get around that if that's what the deal is. But if you're making plans for other people and you have this idea of something that you want to create and build, and then all of a sudden you're sitting, who can I, draw into this? Who would be good to help facilitate or, help me reach my goals? And those individuals haven't been discussed. You're literally in their trajectory. Literally their trajectory. But there's something else I wanted to add to that, though. Having to do with that. Again, I think this is pretty cut and dry, because I think what I answered earlier kind of goes along with that, when people are focusing on other individuals. So, we have had that experience where certain individual will focus on me because of what I do and have grand ideas saying for me, but in reality it's for them. So they want to see, or they run into someone else who has some abilities that they, are you okay then?
Yes, I'm okay.
Other abilities that, someone has abilities that those individuals don't have, and they're looking to see how they can use that person's ability to basically boost themselves up. So it's just a form of actually just trying to use people. There are individuals who talk about, even within this well, it's a little bit, this kind of coincides a little bit, where there are individuals talk about how many friends they have. I have a lot of friends, or they want a lot of friends. There are individuals who either they're insecure, or individuals who want to use people. And I've known individuals who are like that. They'll say, we're friends, and then I will back up because I don't know you well enough to even consider you a friend or even an acquaintance. But they've had one meeting, and they enjoy their meeting, and they're just hungry for more. But what I pick up generally is someone who wants to use my energy. And so individuals who are always talking about my friends, generally are people who are feeding. And these so-called friends, and not that all these friends are light beings, density feeds on each other all the time, but these individuals are usually, friends with someone they feel they can get something out of a lot of the time. Sometimes there's some genuine, you get along with somebody, they're fun, you don't feel drained, when you finish, hanging out with them, that's a different situation.
If there's no questions, then.
Yeah, no questions, we can move on.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
So the next question is, what are different ways that density affects your habits or habits in general?
How density affects your habit? Okay.
In terms of, for example, sometimes you said that attachments will get you to eat certain things, other individually
Yeah.
for them.
Well, yeah, this one it can be attachments, or sometimes an attachment in the form of a ghost. I've had those where someone has a person who passed on some time ago who had a certain habit, and the habit is maybe there's something that they like to eat. So if you have someone who's basically attached themselves to you, and you had a certain way of eating before, but all of a sudden it dramatically starts to change, and then all of a sudden you're eating in a certain way, or your interest in certain things that you weren't really interested in before has to do with attachments, i.e. through ghost attachments, or just basically attachments who are literally trying to segue you into something that, for instance, like over drinking or something like that, or just even overeating, anything that's going to be detrimental to your health, just to put you in a very uncomfortable state, so that they can feed off. So, Oh yeah, well, yeah, we do have to. Well, all these come from examples anyway from clients. One client had a relative who had passed on, and when she was during her session, I was smelling baked goods, and then I kept going. Then I just come up every so often. Then I asked the person and said, "Do you have anyone in your family who likes to bake?" And then they thought about their grandfather who had a bakery. And I don't know if she was dealing with the weight issue or whatever, but that individual, well, he was actually interfering with other aspects of her life. And this is when we're talking about, like, I think you might have a question there having to do with ancestors and so on and so forth. That not all ancestors if you have someone who's a family member, so-called family member who's moved on, not all ancestors are there for your benefit. There's a lot of them that are there for their own selfish means. And a lot of us trying to live through your energy and live through you. But you were going to ask.
That ghost would come and feed off of that person and then they would leave.
Yeah, some of them are very clever. They come in, they feed, and then they bounce out somewhere else. So it's different from like a walk-in. Walk-ins are someone where you see someone's personality just change in front of you. Or, the next day, it feels like you're talking to a different person than you were talking to the day before. So there's a lot of different ways that attachments will interfere with your life. There's no, set thing that they all do. They're just very much like the people that they were, the ones who were deceased, or very much like the people that they were when they were still here in this realm. As you know, when you meet a bunch of people, none of them are exactly alike. So it's the same thing on the other side. Depending on what that attachment's about, depends on what your experience is going to be. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay.
I have, this is Jessica. And I was wondering too about like things that you do, like habits that you are more consistent about. Like, I think one was mentioned, like if you ran at the same time every morning, or if you ate the same meals, like every week. Does that then, can density more likely tap into it because they know you're like so predictable in a sense?
Yeah, density loves predictability.
Okay.
They love it when people are, they know that you're going to be on the track at a certain time in the morning, and they know you're going to eat at a certain time of the day, or they know you're going to eat at a certain restaurant, if you're in restaurants at a certain, time of the day. Yeah. So they like predictability, and they will take advantage of that. Yeah, and so what I find with accidents, I would say 100% of them have to do with something on the other side. That there's some density that's actually setting it up. And, when my vision started to transform, I realized that little slips and things like that disappeared. And here I am, I'm walking around, not because I'm walking around slower, because when I was starting to get a lot more attacks, I started to go up and down stairs a lot slower because for some reason, every so often, something would get screw up his nerve and interfere with my perception, and then I miss a step. And then I'd have to grab, hold of the banister or so on. After the vision started to transform, which means like a shield, I have not had any accidents in the last 2 years. No accidental like cutting my finger while I'm preparing food. I mean, I can barely see what the hell I'm preparing these days. I can, I know the gist, I feel it, and I got a very sharp knife. I have not cut myself once. When my vision was just, clear and everything, chop, chop. Every so often, yeah. Not one accident since. Because, again, that goes into the manipulation of the genetics of the human vehicle. The understanding that you are in someone else's arena and they created this arena just for us. And not to be nice. It's just like putting a lab rat in a cage or something like that. Either they eat it, or they experiment with it, or they just do whatever the hell they want to with it. And that's what humans have been. That's what we've been experiencing as a majority. Well, I should say totally. If anyone's not experiencing it, I will just be bold enough to say they're probably shape-shifting. They're not human in the first place.
That brings up the question that was submitted about how did we end up in this fishbowl anyway?
So how did we end up in this fishbowl?
In this incident.
Wow, it's like a sci-fi story. It goes, I don't want to go all the way back to yin and yin, but yin and yin is the beginnings of it all. And this particular fishbowl, which is Gaia, and I refer to Earth as Gaia because she is a consciousness. And when I was a kid, when they talk about Earth, it always seemed like they were talking about a rock floating around in space with no life, no consciousness. Gaia is a consciousness. So when Gaia was hijacked, these things took over, and certain beings were on the planet when it happened, and they suffered being subjugated, annihilated, switched over to the other side, and then sent back in as food. They brought others from other places where they decimated other planets and so on and so forth. It's like when you travel with your livestock. So all these different genetic beings and strains come from elsewhere as a majority. So, so if you were here, you could be one that experienced, and I have had a number of clients who had experienced when that takeover happened, which is really kind of interesting, and they don't even know each other. But this information will come up. It would be from a different point of view each time, but a lot of times they were in the same area where the initial attack came and the initial shift came. So, what was it? Let's see if I can list something.
It doesn't seem like it.
Okay. All right. Well, if I remember, I'll come back to it.
Talk about rangers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the various ways of consciousness being pulled into this nonsense. There are consciousness on the other side, which are called the Supreme Consciousness Universe, which is the vast universe. This is like, as I said before, like half a matchbox in the ocean. So there are those who have been contaminated who don the title of wranglers, who would actually go out and capture very young consciousness and then pull them into this nonsense. And a lot of times it has to do with the lack of wherewithal of the young consciousness. It's just like little kids, walking around. If the parent doesn't tell them, don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from strangers, they may end up getting kidnapped and so on and so forth. Very similar type of deal. So there's a lot of young consciousness on this planet, and that's why they've been able to run things the way they've been able to run it, and that's why they've been able to feed information into individuals, no matter how ridiculous it is, to the point where those individuals can't even see how illogical or how ridiculous that information is. Well, yeah, because the universe is not, does not feed upon itself in its, in its balance. It's like, me starting to chew on my arm or something like that. Reality is that the universe, as I think I might have mentioned it before, the whole purpose is about expansion, exploration, expression, and experience, and in a balanced way. And I'm not talking about rigid like that. I'm talking about a nice flow. It's a nice flow that creates and expresses. So we were saying that, yeah, if you never had to fear anything, there's no fear of anything. There's a story I might have mentioned, maybe not on this, with some clients about the dodo bird. I don't know how many of you remember that story. That was one that was taught when I was in elementary school. That the dodo birds were on this particular island, and there was these guys they were shipwrecked on that island, and they proceeded to they needed to eat. And there was these big birds that were walking around there that didn't have any predators that would eat them. So they didn't have any reason to fear anything. So they walked around, and these sailors would just walk up on them, grab hold of them, kill them, and then eat them. And I don't think that apparently they're supposed to be extinct, but due to the fact that they didn't have a fear or any sense that they needed to be afraid of anything, they just looked at this, these people or these beings walking up to them, even though they were odd looking, maybe, or maybe the dodo birds have seen other things that were, humanoid, that walked up and didn't harass them. But the human, and the density of the human, they killed and ate them to extinction, which is like what a virus does. So again, with humans being brought here, being turned into something akin to a virus. That feeds on itself, feeds on this environment, till there's nothing left. So, I think, okay. I didn't leave anything dangling there. So, any questions on that? All right, we're going to move to the next one.
Okay. The next question is, what is the dream realm, and how can someone affect their dreams?
Okay.
How to contain in their dreams?
Okay. Good question. Not an easy one to really answer because it has to do with how the mind works. And basically how things will compartmentalize your thinking. So the dream realm to me is not any different from a daydream. The difference is that the daydream, you try to control your daydream. In the dream realm, density tries to control your dream realm. So when I do, I suggest certain exercises to control your dreams. One is something that I got from a book I read years ago, but it was like maybe 19 years old. Carlos Castaneda, I forget the rest of the name of the book, but had to do with him doing this practice of looking at his hands before he would go to sleep. And by him saying, he said, I will look at my hands in my dream. So when I start to dream, I will look at my hands. And I don't remember how long it took for him to actually succeed at controlling his dreams that way, but I did try it. And I'd say maybe it took me, 3 or 4 times. And then finally, one night during a dream, I'm in it, not a very comfortable dream. I said, look at my hands, I look at my hands, all of a sudden my consciousness comes awake and I start to control the dream. So all of a sudden the nightmare, got turned around. Things that were chasing me, I began to chase it. But when you start to chase it, what happens when the things are piloting your dream, they cut that dream off. And I don't know if any of you have experienced that. And I know when I taught Ms. A to do it, she experienced them ending the dream immediately. And other individuals who I've taught that process, the dream would end just like that. Because all of a sudden, they're taking control of themselves in the dream. And you know how dreams work sometimes. All of a sudden, you're plopped in the middle of something, and you're not exactly sure how you even got there. Sometimes you get dropped in the middle of something. I've had dreams like that years ago. I get dropped in the middle of something, and I'm working some kind of machine that I have no idea what it is in my waking hours. I don't know what I was doing, but in that dream, I sure as hell knew what I was doing. Because there was something that was controlling my consciousness at that time when I was quite young. So when you learn how to control your dreams, and again, let's say, well, I look at my feet, and that'll work, whatever works. But I find the one with looking at your hands before you go to bed or go to sleep. I will see my hands in my dream. Therefore, I will be able to control my dreams. So that's literally the difference. It's like the daydream is imagination, and you're trying to control it because there are individuals and there are times that even if you're trying to control your own dreams, sometimes you'll find it like hard, like someone's trying to grab the steering wheel while you're trying to drive down the street. Yeah, daydream. I'm sorry, daydream. You'll find that happen every now and then, or it happens a lot to some people. Even in their imagination, they're having a hard time controlling what they want to imagine for themselves. So with that, I know it's like the dreams and daydreams, and there's another part of it.
How to contain in the dream realm, consistently contain in their waking realm.
Yeah, that's true, because they was talking about people containing in their dreams. If you're doing your containment regularly, inevitably you end up containing in your dream. And if you contain in your dreams, this is very similar to the exercise of looking at your hands, but you're containing, and that's becoming part of your daily routine, which is part of your life. All of a sudden you're in a dream realm and something's coming that's being threatening, and you contain it. And every time a person has contained anything in the dreams, the thing will run away or the dream will end bad. It's supposed to be something like a nightmare. One of the things I would do after a point, because I got wind of density trying to harass me in dreams, I would throw myself back into the dream. And sometimes you just close your eyes and end up right back in the dream state, and I would just wreak havoc. And if they really, really shut the door, then I would imagine it in my mind. I would basically lay there and I would do what you call a daydream of me going back in, because I haven't finished jacking you guys up yet. So I go after them, and I go after them until I'm satisfied. And that's how you start to control. Once you control your dream realm, you'll find it a lot easier to control your waking hours also. Because dreams are basically there to keep you on edge, to keep, basically to keep you weak. Literally keep you weak. Okay.
The next question is about what's the difference between lucid dreaming and dreaming?
Oh, the difference between lucid dreaming and dreaming. Lucid dreaming is really interesting. There's been times when, with lucid dreams, it seems like they usually have some kind of a message in it. And it depends. Sometimes it has something to do with past expressions, that you're doing something in a dream, but it seems very, very real. And that's what lucid dreaming is. It's very similar to having an out-of-body, but it's different, but it's similar to having an out-of-body. It's like the dream feels very real. So in lucid dreams that I've had at times, I would be able to touch surfaces and feel the difference of the texture of surfaces. You can feel the breeze. If you step in water, you can feel the wetness of the water as though you were, awake. And a lot of times, whenever I've had lucid dreams, they've always been quite cool, really, really nice. But that has to do with something having to do with your higher consciousness, percolating something up to try to wake you up. So when it comes to lucid dreams, if you don't yet figure it out, like immediately, don't worry about it. It's just pieces to a puzzle. And just take it, remember it. If you have a journal, you just write it down and then just put it away. Because inevitably, somewhere down the road, you're going to get some information, either if you're having a session with me, or you start to have a series of dreams that actually start to build something. But then again, because of the way things are here, you need an interpreter. So in order to interpret what the higher consciousness is trying to tell you, you definitely need someone to interpret. That's what I do. I interpret the information that's coming off of your energy and what I'm finding in your energy. Because again, what institutions are designed for here are to basically keep you in a box. Don't think outside that box. And when you're having lucid dreams and these types of things where your higher consciousness is trying to wake you up, they're pushing beyond the limitations of the box. And if you're afraid of going outside the box, which a lot of people are, because I don't want to feel crazy or something like that, they just compress and they never quite get the information that their higher consciousness is trying to give them. Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone wants to share. Well, the one you had a really cool dream that you shared, and I don't know if that's cool for us to bring that up.
It was a public post about a dream, but it is an example of lucid dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That would be considered lucid dreaming, you said?
Yeah. Did it felt very real?
Yes, it did.
That's a lucid dream. And from what I read, which I think we gave you, we responded to that, that it had a message for you, and you got it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I felt because it was a dream that I had revisited that I had a year plus ago, and then I revisited, but my reaction in the dream was more. I felt more empowered than I did the first time.
Right. Yeah, that's what we got from reading the post. And that's why we were just like, wow, this is so cool. Literally through the work and just everything that you're doing to change, as you said, to change who you are, change your life, has to do with the new kind of information coming in that knocks down the walls from all the old stuff, to the point where you could actually see for yourself, the positive aspects of it. And then realizing what it was saying, you're moving in the right direction. Moving in the right direction. Keep moving. Keep going. And that's a really good example of a lucid dream and actually being able to get the information from it. And thank you for sharing that. Okay, so any other questions having to do with lucid dreams?
I have a question about dreams. This is Jessica.
Okay.
So sometimes I can contain in the dream, but sometimes I also wake up and then be like, oh, I need to contain that dream. So are both effective, or is it, moving towards wanting to contain as you're in the dream?
Well, they're both effective. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're both effective.
Okay.
It's your intent. That's how the containment works. It works with you connecting your intent with the actions that you want. So you do it in, something wants you to think in terms of, you have to do step 1 and then step 3 and so on and so forth. When in reality, the universe doesn't work that way. So when I talk about something that has to do with radio thinking, for instance, radio thinking has to do with expanding your ideas or connecting to things in 360. And the way that humans have been locked down is very linear. I think I mentioned that. But the density that locks you down, they think stack, as I call it, stack thinking, which means they put one thing on top of the other. They're still limited, but they're still seeing, it's like you're living in a one-story flat, and these guys are living in a 10-story apartment building. So if they're messing with you, they're messing with you on 10 different levels, and all you can see is one. So when it comes to radio, how things with radio, I reach from all over. You know, stack is still restrictive. And that's why they have a really hard time when they start fighting with me, because I'm radio and they're stack. And the reason that a lot of people can't understand how I do what I do is because of the programming, through institutionalized programming, they are stuck in basically linear thought or, you know, tunnel vision, which you can break out of. You know, with just work and just keep, you know, understanding, keep thinking in terms of breaking out of linear thinking as a mantra. Guess what? Your mind tries to assist in helping you. Sometimes you will see some examples, but you're still not quite able to understand what they're showing you. But you just keep thinking in terms, I am breaking out of tunnel vision, out of linear thinking. So once you break out of linear thinking, you're going to end up in the stack thinking, which is, you know, which is more evolved than linear, of course, but it still has walls, but it has more floors. So, you know, all of a sudden you can put a certain thing that is affecting you together with something else that's affecting you from over here. Instead of everything, I have to just focus on this one thing until I get this done. But while you're focusing on this one thing, you know, they're burning down your, you know, your house over here, or you're focusing on the chicken coop over here. With stack thinking, you can see, okay, whoop, they're trying to burn down my house while I'm over here. Okay, I'm over there, I'm gonna get you. And this, oh, well, we got another thing. We're gonna drop something on top of you from there. And you look, ah, they're trying to drop something. So literally it's basically being able to think toe-to-toe with the density that's trying to destroy you, literally, or feed off you.
Does it have anything to do with, like, when the session sometimes someone feel pain in the shoulder, but you know that you need to keep at the head?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, so there's times, and I know a number of you have experienced it, where I'm working on a certain area, and they say, you know, my toe is, you know, really killing me, or my foot's really killing me. And I said, yeah, I'm working here right now, because they're literally trying to distract me, pull me away from something that I'm getting really close to. And usually what happens after I do that, and you remember, the pain will start to go away in the foot because I'm not buying the ruse.
Feel it coming from being pulled out of their head from their toes, or?
Yeah, well, I can pull things from, you know, everything in most cases are connected by some kind of a weird energetic line that density is built up in the physical body and the avatar of people. So there are certain central areas I can just start pulling from one area. Sometimes it's the heart chakra, sometimes it's the crown of the head or the temple or something. And I'll pull in this area, and they'll feel me pulling from their feet. These are individuals on Skype as well as people in the studio will feel me pulling from, you know, I feel me pulling it from my feet, but I'm at the heart, and I say, yeah, because, you know, it's all connected. Or they'll feel it in their, you know, in their fingertips or somewhere else.
Talking about how density is very, you know, they're stacked thinkers. So when you're pulling out of the head, the heart chakra, sometimes you'll go down layer after layer.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do set things up in stacks. That's why we're talking about peeling an onion. So, yeah, they have things in layers. And, you know, it's like any corporate building or something. They have certain functions on this floor and certain functions on that floor and certain functions on, you know, on all these different floors. And depending on a person's experience, how many times they have had, how many past lives or expressions they've had previous, depends on how many stacks there are. So, you know, there are very few people who have few stacks. You know, usually I'd say 20 or more, easily, 20 or more. And some people have like 100 or so. Yeah.
And so many times people will, and when you talk about linear thinking, it's like for example, oh, I'm a plumber or I'm an electrician, I don't do that job, so then you have to ask someone else to do it. And it's just an example of how they, categorize and keep everything separated so no communication can.
Oh, okay. Well, you're saying this in the sense of stack thinking? Well, yeah, or compartmentalized thinking also. Well, compartmentalized thinking is, when I talk about that, has to do with linear, but it has to do with, when you're thinking or looking at things in a linear manner or tunnel vision, you only see what you see through that tube. And then if you want to, look at something else, and I think I might have talked about this before, you have to move the tube over to this, then all of a sudden you can't see what you're looking at over there. So every time there's something else going, you have to move here, and then you can't see what's in these other areas. And there are things going on constantly in all of these areas. But you're only programmed to only see one thing at a time, which is, it's an advantage to the things that want to feed off you and want to take advantage. So you would ask the question, I don't know if that addressed it though.
It's just to spark whatever inspires you to share. Other than, I guess if they have any questions about the different, what is linear thinking, or how, if they have an example.
Well, I think I just gave that example for linear thinking, just being able to see, focus on one thing at a time. I think I used the term, analogy of standing in line behind, behind somebody, and you can kind of lean out this way, but all you see is just this long line, and you're programmed just to stay in line. Wait your turn, stay in line. There's certain cultures that are big on queuing, and if you get out of queue, man, it's war. So when it comes to like linear thinking, it's like stepping out of line, not worrying about losing my space or my spot, because 9 times out of 10, the line you're standing in is leading to a meat grinder that's just going to chew you up anyway. So it's like, oh, if you step out of line, some bad things will happen. Maybe the cops will arrest you for stepping out of line. A lot of the stuff that they're doing with some of this nonsense with this COVID business, excuse me, they're trying to force people to do things that they don't want to do, like take that vaccine, or they're going to couple it with if you get a passport, you can't get a passport without it, can't get on a plane without it, can't get a job without it, and all that. This is all this dense programming to keep the chickens in the coop and keep you in line, and they try to use fear. So they couldn't convince you with the other lies, because a number of people are like, this doesn't make any sense. Even people who are just locked down are starting to feel like, there's something up with this. I'm not going to follow this anymore. I'm not wearing a mask every day. So they had to ramp it up because they want to keep those chickens in the coop. Then they started to add all this other stuff. Well, you can't function unless you do what we want you to do. You're going to take this thing that we've created in our secret lab, which you don't know what the hell we have in it. A freaking system that lies to you all the time wants you to trust them all of a sudden. So, I've touched on the COVID thing before, because I still will say loudly it's bullshit. And there's actually a movement out there of people saying it's a fake, because it is. But if they can tap into your fear, that's how they basically squash critical thinking. Why would I believe a system that lies all the time? All the time. Then tells me all of a sudden my life is in danger because of some mystical mystery virus. And here's another one. Everybody, you're gonna fucking die someday. So it's gonna happen, but I'm gonna spend my life being afraid of the inevitable. What's the point of it? If I really, as a little kid, have had these thoughts as a little kid, I'd have tried to throw myself off a bridge or something. It's like, what's the point of it? I'm going to, perish at some point. I'm going to transition at some point. But the whole thing, I have to be afraid of it every step of the way, of what's coming. It's a bunch of nonsense. So anyway, with that, we don't make a soapbox.
Well, in terms of, I don't know why, this is just coming up, and you can tell me if you.
Okay.
With linear thinking, that's why you had to add on the website that you do mind and energy detox. People think that they're separated.
Oh, yeah. Well, we did have to add that. And when I was talking about metaphysical psychotherapy, it just seemed like it was kind of a puzzle to people, but it's mind and because the mind is involved with everything. So if you are not feeling well, the mind is very much connected to it. So if you think that every little ache is something that you have to run to the doctors to, it means that you've been programmed to believe that there's, that this individual or these individuals have all the answers. And I don't know how many of you have been in the hospital where they're like, okay, well, we need to do more tests, which means they don't know what the hell's going on. So with that type of numbers, basically as part of, linear thinking, compartmentalized thinking, institutionalized programming, that you are supposed to believe in whatever they tell you, that you don't have the capacity to maybe figure out how to just deal with something having to do with a rash or something. Maybe I should figure out what am I eating. I don't have to go to a specialist. Maybe I never went to a freaking specialist for anything. I just figured it out myself. So if I had, was getting sinus infections and so on and so forth, until I learned how to do muscle testing, then muscle test the foods that I was eating and finding out, oh, well, I have this thing having to do with wheat, but that had to do with how my energy was vibrating also due to all the other contaminations, all the contaminants that I had been exposed to. So I did get off of wheat, the problem went away. Then, well, honey, I used to be able to eat honey. Ate a lot of honey, thought it was being healthy. Then all of a sudden I ended up with this reaction with honey that just dried out my lips and it just got all crusty and everything. And I couldn't figure out what the heck I was eating. And then, because I had been, followed the program, honey's healthy. Maybe it was at one point, some of it, but not all of it, because there's a lot of genetically modified stuff out there. Bees are genetically modified, certain types of bees as well. So I narrowed it down. Finally, it's got to be something that I think isn't supposed to be a problem. Bingo, was honey. With honey, it had to do with also, which I was eating before without having a problem, but it had to do with how much pesticides were being put and spread all over the place, and where the bees were getting the nectar. And so what was happening was contaminating, the honey. And someone talking about wild honey. Well, where do the wild bees go to get the wild, get their pollen for the wild honey? A lot of them end up in these same fields, basically taking in the same toxins and the same pesticides. So I had to get off of, stop eating honey, because guess what? My body is more important than my desire to eat honey, or your body's more important than your desire to eat pizza or ice cream. It tastes good and so on and so forth, but does my body like it? So if my body doesn't like it, it's going to make me pay. So anyway, any questions on that? Okay, we can move on.
In terms of another linear example,
Okay, that is very linear program thinking, and we have a client who wants help, but he doesn't want to let go of, he doesn't want to tell me everything also, which eventually I find out everything regardless as to whether the person tells me or not. But it's like someone, I think I might have mentioned, someone showing up at your doorstep with an elephant tied to his belt, on a leash, and he wants to come in. And I say, well, you're going to have to leave an elephant at the door. And he looks around, what elephant?
There's no elephant.
So it's individuals who want to be, cleared and, want to evolve, but they don't want to acknowledge the things that they're holding on to that's keeping them from being cleared properly. So I can clear a person even around the elephant, but eventually I'm going to say, look, have a client having to do with breast implants. You don't want to clear it because I have this ache here and this ache here and so on and so forth. And I would say, well, okay, do you have implants? Because I'm picking up. I said, yes, I have these implants. I said, okay, so when did these pains start? How long ago did you get the implants? A certain number of years. And I said, okay, so when did these particular types of pains start? Oh, maybe about 6 months to a year later. So putting the pieces together, and then through muscle testing and so on, what I do, it's like, what your problem is these implants. And the person was attached to these because they felt that it was part of their identity. So these foreign objects that were placed, they were convinced to place in their bodies that were killing them, they were convinced that they were their little friends. And so I had to convince that person that these aren't just friends. These are friends you really need to get new friends because these things are killing you. So the same with this person that we're talking about, the guy, he literally had some very traumatic things happen where he had 4 years of real trauma that he never mentioned in the beginning, but I said, I know there's something going on, but if I point it out, they're going to deny it because they're not ready. And also how density works, they literally do block parts of your memory. And this has happened time and time again, where I bring something up, there's something that happened to you, you got bullied in school at a certain age. Do you remember? Oh, no, I don't remember anything like that. And some of it's just like an embarrassment that they got bullied. But then I go deeper and deeper, okay, and then I just find another way to get to it, find out the person was bullied, and the bullying was so horrendous that they took to taking drugs to escape the pain and the discomfort of their lives, which escalated after he got out of school and became a problem for him. But he didn't want to face that because, again, maybe I'm not, will be perceived as less of a man if I admit that I had been basically bullied and awful things have been done to me. That will be perceived as someone who doesn't, isn't strong. And it's not about whether you're strong or not, it's about whether you're being attacked or not. Because density works very, very cleverly, which I shouldn't say cleverly. If I turn someone into an infant, I'm not really clever. It doesn't take much brains to trick an infant. But if you can literally boil down to that, then these guys aren't brilliant. They're just little bullies and little a-holes who are literally cannibalizing other consciousness. So, any questions on that? Okay. All right.
That's a great segue because whenever you say that density is portrayed as brilliant, and that, for example, the IQ test, they tout that they're brilliant whenever you said they're just tricking someone who's been boiled down to a child state.
Yeah, the whole IQ test was really quite a curiosity to me when I was in high school, and it's literally designating somebody a genius due to some test that a number of eggheads put together who have nothing to do with the broad variety of cultures on the planet. So the questions, I used to remember the questions, but I found that IQ is such a BS thing that I just don't even remember anymore.
What's the square root?
Yeah, all these things. Do you know the square root of this? Or do you know that? What does this word mean? So on and so forth, and this and that. And if you don't know it because you haven't been exposed to it, you're an idiot, I guess, is really what they're trying to say. This person's a genius, and you're all idiots. They even have a Mensa club or whatever. These guys who remember. There's little computers who remember stuff. And I knew a couple people who one person, well, I never really knew these guys, the so-called IQ geniuses personally, but one guy, his brother was one of them. And this guy whose brother was one of these guys, hardworking guy, started his own company and so on and so forth, but he didn't, he was low on the IQ test. And when you talked about his brother, his older brother, who was this so-called genius because he had such high scores in IQ tests, the guy was basically a slacker. He wouldn't work. He just borrowed money from the family and didn't do jack. And then we'll rest on his laurels. Well, I have a high IQ and I'm smarter than you. And I said, well, maybe he is. You guys are supporting his ass, and he's just sitting on his butt. But the reality of the matter is that IQ doesn't mean anything. It's just another game, another ploy to make others feel bad. It's like just even someone talking about someone as an old soul, because this kid, I think I might have mentioned this before, or this kid can play piano like an adult and so on and so forth at a very, very young age. When to me, I look at him and said, there's another little computerized robot there who's doing a little trick so that others who are being programmed look at him and go, wow, I can't do that. I must be deficient. He's superior. I'm deficient. So they're literally telling you that a computer, someone who can remember things that the program tells them to remember, is a genius. Again, there's all these different cultures who have all this different knowledge, but they're going to rate the genius on some Western, nonsense. You don't know this, you don't know that, And granted, a lot of these types of individuals I just veered away from anyway because they have weak-ass egos, a lot of them. They constantly try to prove how much smarter they are than you. It's like going into a doctor's office and you're not a doctor, and you sit there and he just starts to describe things in doctor speak. Or you go into a lawyer's office, you're not a lawyer, and he starts to describe things in lawyer speak. I'm not, a doctor, so he's all these words, and I think that there's certain words for just some like abrasions and so on and so forth. And when I was a kid, an abrasion meant you just scrape yourself. Instead of saying, we got a nice scrape there, we can put something on that. It's an abrasion or epidermis and all these other terms. I have clients who come in and they give me this variety of garden variety names of all these weird ass diseases, and they're like, you know what this one is, you know what that one is. I said, all I know is that it's energy. So some of them I'm familiar with, but don't test me with a bunch of Palladian words, because they're not fixing you. That's why you're standing in front of me with this, this freaking grocery list of this, that the doctors told you have. When 9 times out of 10, they couldn't find their own butts with both hands. Come to me, I look at its energy. Oh, really? Yes, it's energy. Let me work on you. I work on you, all of a sudden you go back, the grocery list has been minimized because it's all energy. But it's a system, with medical system, to try to make you feel like you're an idiot. We're the only ones who can do whatever, and I think a lot of you who are here know how that works, and that's why you're here, because you've been through that nonsense. But anyway, if there's anything that you want to ask that has to do with what we're talking about, I won't get too far into that, so we can just move on to the next question. Or we still have something still connected to linear thinking.
No, actually, you went right through several other questions.
Oh,
so I just kept going through, lining up all the questions that came through whenever you were inspired. So you already answered.
Well, you can run down the list that I didn't go through.
The questions that you already went through was, can you explain how density blocks selected memories and why? Mm-hmm. And then the next question was, is an IQ test an accurate measurement of someone's intelligence?
Which is no.
And if not, what does it really measure? And you said
nothing.
You said that it can measure how robotic someone was,
Yeah.
and also how much it segues into ego. And so the next question was, how do I detect if I have an ego issue?
Oh, okay. Yeah, with ego, ego's based on insecurity, one, and fear, big time. And I might have said this before, generally the people with the biggest ego have the weakest ego. So if you feel like you have to be over someone, that's an ego issue. Or you feel that you have to, in other words, it goes, it's in the same vein as being over someone, but you're having to crush someone to minimize them. That's ego, literally. So it's pretty simple. It's like if you feel that, for whatever reason, and sometimes people's egos are triggered by the behavior of others or experiences that they've had where they were pushed down and had someone, lording over them and telling them they're stupid and so on and so forth. And because they don't have that expansive a way of dealing with things or creative way of dealing with things, they look at this person and they say, well, it's like, I use an example of corporate hierarchy where they have managers, CEOs, managers, and supervisors and so on and so forth. And then there's the grunts down there. And so there's a certain number of grunts who, getting treated badly by the supervisors. And so someone will say, well, I'm just going to strive to be a supervisor, and then I won't have, this person beating me down, but I can turn around and I can beat them down, and that should make me feel better, which all of a sudden turns you into a mini egomaniac. And then as you go up the ladder, you're the supervisor, but then you have these other managers over you, browbeating you, then I want to get up there, and I'm going to get to, and it's basically, it's literally just insanity. And it's just another form of literally feeding on others and conditioning individuals to support the system of essence feeding and consciousness cannibalism.
So that, if no one has a question, it segues into another.
Yeah, any questions on this? Okay, let's move on.
So the next one, it talks about sometimes people fuel their ego by owning or controlling others, or even animals, or like they have to own a thing, like a red Ferrari to feel,
Yeah, that has to do with weak egos. What you're talking about, even individuals, there's certain people who like to, they get a certain amount of money or whatever, and money is part of an ego thing, and also can be part of an ego thing, big time, where they'll buy a wild tiger or something like that, and then they have pictures of them sitting with their wild tiger sitting next to them, and that's a major ego trip, because here I am, I know where it comes from, what the roots of it is, but it's all Jungian nonsense, literally. Where I control this beast, therefore I am powerful. When in reality, I don't know if anyone remembers that story of Siegfried and Roy, those guys. And after I don't know how many years or decades, they were, had these majestic animals doing tricks. One just had enough finally and just killed one of the guys after all these years. So literally, it's about a disrespect for another consciousness. Regardless as to whether you think it's a wild animal or not, it's a consciousness. If it's in the wild, that's where it belongs. So there was another part of that you had.
Yes, it's actually, it segues into the next question about being special. Sometimes people feel like external things make them special, or
a lot.
Is it dense to want to be special?
Yeah, it's a damage, really. It's a damage to want to be special. And again, it's through observation. It's like little kids who observe an older kid doing certain things, and they don't know whether what that kid is doing is healthy or not. So it's the older kids, like a 6-year-old smoking cigarettes, and there's a little 4-year-old thinking, wow, this guy's really cool. He's bigger, he's taller than me, and he pushes me around. I can't push him around. To be like him must be it. So they want to do the same thing that the big idiot's doing. And they think that that's, I guess, an improvement, or, I don't know, having power or being special. And we've all have seen that. If you're a kid and you looked at someone who's older, and you will tend to look up to them until you get wise at some point, or some people never get wise. They still look up to the same people they were looking up to when they were a kid. But when you get wise, you start to really analyze these individuals, which is what I did. That's when I just like, no. I don't think any of these individuals are people that I should want to be like or follow. I respect the positive things that people have to offer, but the whole picture, 9 times out of 10, or 10 times out of 10, well, I'll say 9 times out of 10, there's a whole lot of negativity in there. You may be just seeing a little bit of that positive, but up under all of that is a whole lot of negatives. And there have been individuals who have these types of experiences with people who show themselves as these, special people, or they interact with people a certain way, but then you behave like a little toady because you're so impressed, or a little slave, and then see how fast they treat you like a slave or treat you like a toady. So, I don't know if that's clear, but anyhow, any questions on it? Okay. Now, I don't know if I finished on that, or is there still more?
Yes. In terms of being special, nothing else comes to mind except for that. A lot of times you said like it's triggered by insecurity, because you said when someone says if I'm not special, then what am I? Yeah, again, that's being defined by the system. As if I'm not special, or who am I? A lot of we had answered the question, I think, had to do with individuals ask a question about what's my purpose, and those type of questions falls within the same vein. When in reality, in the proper vibration, the proper realm, there should be no question about who am I. It's like I am part of a whole, and it's just that question is a redundant question if you were to actually address it in a very supreme consciousness universal way, because no one consciousness is more special than the other. Even if one consciousness gives birth to all, that consciousness, am I more important than myself? See, so they are part of. If I am supreme consciousness, my limbs are part of supreme consciousness, my legs, and so on and so forth. That is how the universe is, and that's how I see it. That's how it's been relayed to me. So, my hands, like, am I more important than my right hand? It's like, that's ridiculous. Can you function? Yeah, I function fine. What's the issue? But this is programming having to do with who am I, what's my purpose, and how can it be special? In reality, if you're doing what you need to do for yourself, you don't need to even think about those types of questions. How do you feel when you do things that agree with you? How do you feel when you go against things that don't agree with you? That's what's important. So. You had someone ask, who am I? What am I?
I did tell someone that I said your consciousness, expressing yourself in supreme consciousness universe, but they had some new age approach to it, and I don't think they really quite understood what it meant. But what I explained was literally, just explain addresses that also.
Consciousness.
Yeah, I'm consciousness of supreme consciousness universe. The supreme, we all are consciousness of the supreme consciousness universe. We're just in this weird little anomaly right now. And again, there's a lot of changes going on, and you may see them happening with people out there. It seems like they're getting a little nuttier, or just even looking up to the night sky. Certain individuals are afraid to look up to because of the amount of density, the MCs that sit up there and like, oh, you don't want to do that. Oh, they're talking about UFOs or whatever. Oh, that's crazy talk. That's crazy talk. Why is it crazy talk? Who's to say what does and doesn't exist? what scientists can sit there and tell you that they know every single thing there is to know in the universe. Which means there's a whole hell of a lot to learn. And I'm not going to wait for some egghead to tell me what is and what isn't. That's why I am where I am right now, doing what I'm doing. Because I followed something that made more sense than the things that wanted to lock me down into a program. Especially if you look at the whole thing, get out of that tunnel vision, look at the radio, you'll say, well, why should I trust something, again, very simple, that lies to me all the time? That's because they're running around screaming it and waving their arms around like Kermit the Frog or something. Oh, be afraid, this guy's falling, it's gonna fall. Oh, panic, 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 panic. But because of programming, a lot of people go, and start panicking. If you're a thinker, a critical thinker, you're going to say, let me think about this. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So you guys go ahead and panic. Look, I'm going to stay steadfast. They said, well, you need to know what's going on out there. You don't know what's going on out there. All you need to know is where I'm at in my energy. And 9 times, well, I shouldn't say 9 times, every time you start to focus on where you are in your energy, in your conscious energy, you'll find that you're having a different experience from the people who are out there panicking. Because their panicking is making them, in other words, causing them to feed the things that are trying to frighten them. If you're not frightened by it, you move smoothly. You have family members who will come up, boy, you're going to move to that foreign country, you got your shots, and you got this, ooh, and I heard this, and I heard that, and so on and so forth. When I moved here with my kids, over a decade ago, a certain person was telling me they were going to get, someone's going to walk up on them and inject them with something, and then they're going to wake up as prostitutes. That kind of nonsense. Think it's like outlandish, but that kind of crap goes on all the time. Be afraid of changing your situation. Be afraid of changing a scenario that you don't like. Well, it could be worse. Oh, really? Well, guess what? I'm going to find out if it's worse, because sitting where I'm at right now sure isn't fun. So, well, at least it'll be interesting if it's worse. But guess what? It's never worse. Or if you do that jump, jumping empty-handed into the void, yeah, it feels scary at first, but after a point, you realize that, the world didn't collapse around me. And also, they said, well, you could die. Oh, you mean transition? Oh, yeah, I can transition out of hell? Oh, hell yeah, man, come on, bring it. So,
sometimes when people want to move forward, the most thing that consumes their mind is like a fatalistic perspective. Like, if they make a mistake while they're moving forward, they just feel like maybe that's going to define me, or this.
Yeah, there's layers and layers of programming. That's why it's good. Like I said, you can't get to radial thinking. At least get to stack thinking, which means that there's other levels that are feeding into whatever the issues you're having. So if you can get there, at least you can start to get on the same playing field as the density that are taking advantage, or trying to take advantage, or successfully taking advantage of most people on the planet.
You were talking about how not just seeing, sometimes people will get really consumed in a personal squabble that they have with someone, instead of seeing it as a tool that density uses in their playbook.
Yeah, every time someone gets into an argument with another person, that is density at play. And arguments that are unresolved generally tend to be about things that are petty a lot of the time. And someone will say, well, my sister's sleeping with my husband. Is that, and that's not petty. You know what, that's petty too. How you deal with it is how you deal with it. You resolve the issue. If you don't like the situation, get the hell out of it. But standing there and arguing back and forth and being pissed off at each other for the next 20 years is definitely not very productive. Keeps you locked down. You never have any expansion, or any enlightenment in your life. You're just stuck in this rut of some anger issue. So
that brings up also whenever you talked about ancestors and ancestor worship, some people think, oh, that's such a nice thing that you're paying homage to your ancestors, but really it's locking them into that expression. Just like if you're locked into, you can't get over that your sister slept with your husband, it's locking you into a moment in time.
Yeah.
A moment in expression.
Yeah, it's actually whole altars to ancestors and things of that sort. Again, experience I had years ago as well, because I was doing my search and doing, taking notes. And what it was I really didn't feel right about it. And someone said, well, it's something that the indigenous cultures do, so therefore it's right. But you don't know if this was introduced to those indigenous cultures after density arrived. Because what these altars do, inevitably, they lock someone's consciousness into that altar. When in reality, that consciousness should be free to move on and express itself in another way. So, we talk about loaded words like family, using the word family as an excuse to interfere with another family member's trajectory. Now, if somebody's doing something that's not really cool, I get it. You want to, try to get them to, stop, shooting heroin or something. But in the end, it's their, it's their trajectory. It's what, if you can't get them to understand your point of view, at some point you're going to have to stand back. And, if you don't like seeing what's happening, find somewhere else to be. But if you get into that, in other words, you're actually also sidetracking, you're allowing them, or the density inside of them, to sidetrack your journey. So individuals who find themselves taking care of family members, for whatever reason, or even if those family members are someone who put themselves in that position, where, kidney failure from over drinking or any other kind of infirmities, that's density working through them that basically push them to the point to actually deteriorate and destroy themselves in that way. And then I'm supposed to be caring, and I want to feel like I'm a caring person because that's the program. If you're a caring person, you will sacrifice yourself for someone else's nonsense, someone else's mistake. So, what's that? The topic? That's time mark race. So, anyone have any questions before we wrap this up? Okay. All right. So, thanks for participating in the third Ask the Chief forum. It's been fun for me, anyway, and I hope it's been informative and at least fun for you guys as well.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you all, and you're welcome. Okay. Everyone have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.